I built an AI agent that created a 50 slide presentation about beavers in 90 seconds. In this video, I'm going to show you how I did that in N8N and also give you the template for you to download completely for free. Once you have that template, you'll be able to create a presentation on any topic that you can literally imagine. Now, let's look at how this AI agent was built together and go through the workflow so that if you want to make any customizations or edits whenever you download this template, you can. If we look at the two different workflows in front of us, we have something that I've titled a single design and something that I've titled multiple designs. Before we start, I just want to shout out that this first single design workflow was actually created by another content creator, and I'm going to make sure to link their video down in the description below. What I did for myself and you guys is I've taken that workflow and made it better by integrating multiple different slide designs into the workflow. So you might be asking, Timothy, what do you mean by a single design? What do you mean by multiple designs? Well, it all has to do with, in your final product, how are the slides formatted? Let's look at an example. If I look at slides that were created through that first workflow, we have these 10 slides here. What you'll notice in this presentation is that all 10 slides are formatted exactly the same. So it starts to become a little bit monotonous. What I've done in the multiple designs workflow is make it so that in a single presentation, all of your slides will switch between different types of designs and formats. So let's take a look. In this example that I showed you guys in the beginning of this YouTube video, you'll notice that if we scroll through, we have a few different formats for slides. So we have this format where the header and subheader are to the left and the bullet points are to the right. We have this format where the header and subheader and bullets are kind of put off to the left. And then we have a third format where the header, subheader, and bullets are all centered. So if you notice what happens whenever we scroll through the slides, the monotony is really broken up because the format and design switches. Where if we go back to the original example of just the single design workflow, it all just has one format. So it starts to become really boring and your attention span when looking at it is pretty low. Now that you know the difference between these two workflows, let's actually walk through them and see them in action. So for this first workflow, what we have is a chat message trigger, and all we have to do is type what presentation we want to be built, and it's going to trigger this entire workflow. So let's look at an example. I want or create a presentation on beavers. So if I hit enter here, then this is going to start triggering the workflow. And what's going to happen is that once this is done loading, then if you head over into Google Drive, then you'll be able to actually see that presentation there. So I'm going to let this load and then let's see what happens. That workflow has just completed running. So let's look at the output together. In this output, we have an entire presentation about beavers. So if you think about it, all I did was type create a presentation about beavers and look at this output that we got. That's pretty sick. Now, if we go back to the workflow, there's a few different things that we can do to change what type of output we get or what the formatting looks like. If you remember, this workflow is designed to just build out a single format or design. So if we look here, if all these slides are formatted in one way. Well, we have different designs that we can use if you want to make your slides look a little bit different. So here's what I mean. I'm going to go ahead and change out this design one node with these two. So I'll start with this one and then I'll start with this one. And let's see what happens when I do that. So let me just switch these out and I'll add this in. Now that we've switched out this design 1 and design 2 node, I'm going to go ahead and trigger this workflow so that we can see what the output looks like. I'll go ahead and skip the video so you don't have to wait and watch this load with me. So when we jump back in, you'll be able to see what the output looks like. Awesome, that just finished running. So let's look at what the output looks like. Initially, for design 1, the first workflow that we executed, this was the output. So the header, subheader, and bullets were all kind of centered to the left. In the design 2 node that we just executed, you'll notice that this formatting is completely different. Now we have 2 columns. In the left column, we have the header and subheader, and then to the right, we have the bullets. So what I've done in this workflow is, let me put that back. What I've done in this workflow is create different design nodes, and depending on which one you use in this workflow, that's going to influence how your slides are actually formatted. Just to show you really quickly what design 3 looks like, let me go ahead and switch out these nodes and execute that as well. Okay, the design 3 node just finished running, so let's see what that output looks like. To recap, we have design 1, where everything is centered to the left. We have design 2, where we have 2 different columns. And for design 3, we have everything centered in the middle. If we go back to the workflow, we can now see that depending on what design node we use, that's going to influence the formatting of our final product. Now that you know how the design node works in terms of being able to switch them out to influence your formatting, let's actually look at how this workflow works. As we've been doing, we have a trigger node, which you will be able to use to actually prompt your AI for what you want it to do. So for this, we have a chat trigger where I'm able to just type in this chat box what I want. So create a presentation on horses. And if I hit enter, it's going to trigger the workflow. For this trigger node, we have a few different options. We can either do a chat box like this. We can do a Slack message in our Slack channel. We can do a Telegram message in our Telegram account. So you have a lot of different options for what you actually want to use or actually can use for the trigger, which is pretty cool. Next, this node actually creates the presentation. So this is pretty straightforward, but this is just connected to a Google Slides account. And once it's connected, you're able to actually use this create a presentation node, which is the second part of this entire workflow. Sorry for the interruption, but if you have never connected to the Google API before, I have a quick start guide on how to do just that, and I'll link it at the top of this video. I'll also link it down in the description below. I chose not to include that in this video because some people are already connected to the API and some people have never done it before. So if you need help on how to do it, feel free to click on that link at the top of this video or in the link down in the description below. Now let's get back to the guide. Once we have this node complete, then we have to create what's called an edit field node. And what we're trying to do here is create a node that tells our AI agent how many slides we actually want it to create. So for example, for this one, I have 10, but later on, you can see that we're going to put 50. So you can realistically put as many slides as you want here. Just know that the more slides you put, the longer it's going to take to actually finish. So I think 10 is a good number to start off with, or even 5 to be honest. Once we have created this field that indicates to our AI agent how many slides we actually want, let's actually go and see how this AI agent is built. So we have a prompt that says, you are an AI presentation builder. Given the topic, and here, if you look at this message here, it's basically going to be whatever you use to trigger the workflow. So this message for what I just inputted to create the presentations that we've been looking at would be, given the topic, create a presentation on beavers and slide counts. And so this is going to be the field that we just created. So this is how the AI agent knows how many slides to actually create. So if we were to read this without the actual field here, it would say, you are an AI presentation builder. Given the topic, create a presentation on beavers and slide count 10, generate a slide-by-slide breakdown of slide titles and bullet points in JSON format. Each slide should contain a title, subtitle, and at least 5 detailed bullet points. And here, this is what the format should look like for that JSON. And if you notice in the presentations we've been looking at, that's exactly the format we have. We have title, subtitle, and 5 bullets. So you can change and adjust this however you see fit for your presentation. For this specific AI agent, we have it hooked up to, we just have it hooked up to GPT-4 Mini, but you can connect it to any model that you see fit. I personally like using OpenRouter because with OpenRouter, I have access to all of these different models, and Mini is just a fast model to use when you're trying to teach or show someone an example. So I think it's great for this purpose. Now, once that AI agent actually creates the prompt that you give it, you'll notice that it is in a pretty convoluted output. So what we need to do is clean up that output so that it actually is readable for the nodes that are later in the workflow. So what I've done here is we have a code node, and this code node basically takes that input that we have here that is pretty convoluted and organizes it in a way that it's easier for the nodes that we have later in the workflow to actually use and format. So if you see here, it has all of the slides and all of the information for each of the slides, and this code has cleaned it up to put it into this table so that it's nicely formatted and easier to read. Now, if we head back to the canvas, then let's walk through the rest of this workflow. Awesome. Now that we looked at this code node, let's look at the next step. We have a loop over items node. This one is pretty straightforward. The sole purpose of this is to loop and reactivate this specific part of the workflow for a specific number of times. And the number of times that it loops is dependent on how many slides you want to create. So for example, for us, we created 10 slides. So this is going to loop 9 or 10 times. And each time it loops, that's when it's actually creating one of those slides. So without this node, you wouldn't be able to create the full presentation. The next node, we have this edit fields node. And this is here solely just if you want to add more fields other than title, subtitle, and bullets. But for now, for simplicity's sake, we're just going to stick with these 3 and not add any other fields. Now let's look at probably one of the most important parts of this entire workflow, which is the design node. In this node, this is basically an HTTP request to Google Slides to actually create the presentation. So there are a few important things to call out here. First is that make sure that this method is set to post. And for this URL, let's look at what it's actually doing. This URL is basically telling Google what or where to create those slides. So if you remember in the beginning of this workflow, we created this presentation using this node here, and this node creates what is called a presentation ID. And if we go back to the node here, the design node, we take that presentation ID and input it into this URL here. That way, when we're creating these slides, Google knows where to actually put those slides. Make sure that your expression looks just like this. Once we have the method in URL set up, now we need to go into the other important part of this entire section, which is the code that actually creates the formatting and design of your Google slide. If you look through this code here, you'll notice that everything is specified to the exact T. The font for the header is specified, the font for the subtitle is specified, the font for the bullets are specified, the font size for each of those things are specified, where they're located on the specific slide is specified. It's every little thing. And if you look at this JavaScript, you'll notice that for each of the design nodes, they are different. And it's because they are different how we are able to get the different outputs and designs that we looked at earlier. So for example, this formatting is a single set of code, this formatting is another set of code, and this formatting is another set of code. The creativity that you can express on your end is to use ChatGPT or Claude Code and take these expressions or JavaScript and edit them so that they fit what type of formatting you want. It'll take some trial and error, but I've started with 3 different designs here that you can reference and use. And if you want, you can literally create or add as many as you want. Once this design node is actually done executing, then that's where the workflow actually loops back to make sure that every slide is created based off of the number that we specified earlier in this edit fields node here. Now, that's the majority of the workflow. There's one last section to cover, which is just a failsafe. If we go back to this code node here, we'll notice this error statement and a workflow attached to it. Basically, all I've done here is set up this workflow so that if this ever runs and receives an error more than 2 times, then this workflow is going to shut off. It's basically a failsafe just to make sure that A, it doesn't infinitely run forever, and B, if it does mess up once, at least try it one more time just in case there was some weird error. And usually it doesn't fail, but this is just a failsafe to have just in case it does. Now, let's walk through how this second automation works, and I'm pretty proud to show you guys because I love the updates that I made to this. When you're comparing this first workflow to the first, everything is the same except these 2 sections. We have the switch section, which essentially acts as a randomizer, which I'll explain in a second. And we also have the design section that now includes not 1 node, but all 3 design nodes. Let's do an example so that I can show you guys because it'll make more sense after I run this entire workflow. Let's do a presentation on Moose. I'm gonna let this run and then resume the video when it finishes. That just finished running, so let's look at what the output looks like. If I go here, and it looks like we have a 10-slide presentation about Moose. One thing to call out is looking at the different formats of the slides. So we have this format here that centers it in the middle, this format here where it creates 2 columns, and this format here that centers it to the left. So if we take a look at what was actually happening in this workflow, if you'll notice that each of these design nodes were ran a certain number of times. So this design node was ran 4 times, so that created 4 slides under this design. This one 3 times, and it created 3 slides under that design, and the same thing for this 3rd design node. So how this works is if we take a look at this switch node, or what I'm calling a randomizer node, I've entered a formula here that outputs a random number. Depending on what that random number is, that is going to influence which of these workflows execute. So if the random number executes 0, then it's going to execute this workflow. If the random number is 1, it's going to execute this workflow. And if the random number is 2, it's going to execute this workflow. Now you see how much of a difference this makes when looking at the first workflow, because when you have a presentation with multiple different formats, it completely breaks up the monotony of that slide presentation. And what's really cool about this is if you can create as many designs as you want so that you can completely change up the output that is created when those slides are made. It's so, I don't know, it's kind of crazy. Now that we've overviewed how this second workflow operates, you can go into the 3rd node here and completely adjust this to whatever number of slides you want to create. So let's say I did 50 and I executed this workflow. I already did that earlier, by the way, just to test out for this video, and it took about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Think about that. A 50 slide presentation on beavers, by the way, that literally was created in under 2 minutes. How insane is that? I hope you enjoyed the video. I spent hours working on this AI agent and automation, and if you want it completely for free, I'm giving it away. All you need to do is join my free school community. To do that, click on the link down in the description below. Once you are in that community, your page should look something like this. To download that automation, all you need to do is click on YouTube NAN templates and find the video that you're looking for, or you can type the title of the video. So for example, let's say I'm looking for the Google Slide Agent that I created. All you need to do is search for that video and download this JSON and import it into your NAN. And that's all you need to do. See you for the next video.